You are listening to the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast, where you discover management insights and strategies for a successful dental practice. There are also interviews with key people in the industry who have advice and services to help you and your team achieve great success. Welcome to episode number 5, and I can't tell you how excited I am to announce that our very first guests are appearing on today's episode, Jayne Bandy and Dr. David Moffet. Now, Jayne has been an educator in the past, used to be a school teacher, has a Bachelor of Education, and then she started working with her husband, Dr. David Moffet, within his dental practice, and all of the skills she developed over her years there brought her to this point where she coaches dental teams on dental phone excellence, and that is indeed the name of her business. David Moffet has been a dentist for many years, had his own practice, and he is the creator of the ultimate patient experience. It's a simple and effective way to increase the number of patients you see, the amount of money you charge, and the percentage of large case revenues that your patients will happily pay. And during my discussion with Jayne and David, you will hear them describe what they do, how they can help you achieve greater levels of success within your dental practice. But as you, as an individual team member within the practice that you're working with, how you can be inspired to start progressing and getting better and better at what you do. I hope you enjoy this very first interview that we have here on the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast. So I have got two magnificent guests here with me today. I'm ridiculously excited about it. These two people are superstars in the area of helping dental practices be more successful. David Moffet and Jayne Bandy, welcome to the JPPS podcast.
Oh, Julie, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Superstars, that's very flattering. Thank you.
You certainly are superstars. You've been in this game for a long, long time. And I might start with you, David, since you're furthest to my left on the screen here. Tell me about your history and how you got into this position of consulting with practices and coaching practices to greater success.
Well, Julie, I became a dentist, and I always wanted to achieve great things in dentistry, and I felt that the best way of doing that was by maximising my time. Especially being left-handed meant that I couldn't delegate to right-handers because the equipment had to be set up left-handed, so I couldn't make a right-handed dentist go through what I had to go through as a left-hander working for a right-hander. So I just became very efficient at what I did, and in so doing built a very successful practice for myself. And then as it grew, I was able to fit out right-handed rooms and grow my practice. And I got a call one day from a Victorian dentist, would have been about 2001, saying that he was setting up a mastermind, an annual mastermind, similar to the $1 million round table concept that other industries have. And he wanted to get a group of dentists together, and would I like to come, and who did I know who might be a suitable attendee? And that meeting went annually for about 15 years, and it was through that the facilitator of that meeting said to me, he said, David, you really should give back to the profession and share your story. And so during that time, I sold my practice. I was working in my practice, and I thought, what will I do once I've finished working in my practice? And I thought this was a logical step. And I got that. I also received that same push from a couple of other people in the industry as well. And so it just became the logical progression to share back. And so, I don't teach people how to become dentists, but I teach dentists how to become better business people. And that's what I like to think. Private practice dentistry provides a great opportunity for people to really determine what they're going to get out of their life, where they're going to live, where they're going to send their kids to school, where they're going to retire, when they're going to retire, if it's managed properly. And so that's what I try to instill into my clients, is that they have the power of determining their destiny if they so choose, rather than dentistry determining that they have no destiny if they don't choose anything, which a lot of them don't.
Gosh, that's so powerful, David. This potential of this brand new practice owner, they've got every option under the sun in front of them, and in how they behave in the coming years is going to determine what their lifestyle looks like, what their potential livelihood looks like. That's extraordinarily powerful. And so what did that morph into?
Well, it's morphed into a number of things, Julie. Initially, I started consulting on customer service in dentistry because I felt that was the missing piece. But at the same time, Jayne, who had come to work in my practice, Jayne, of course, was a school teacher. Or she wasn't even a school teacher when we met. She was
Are you telling my story now?
Still at uni. Then after stopping being a school teacher, then she was a parent. And then when the children were old enough to find their own way home from school, I twisted Jayne's arm and she came to work at the practice. But after she left the practice, she was pushed by me, but she was also encouraged by other people to teach what she did so well, which was how to manage the phones. And so she's done that. So initially we kept these businesses as two separate parts away from each other. But the more, even though her part was really part of the customer service, but the more I listened to what she was going through with her clients, the more I realised that there's more to answering the phone than just talking to new patients. There's existing patients who are confused, and there's also existing patients who have no idea why or what they need to be doing. And so it related back to the service side. And so, people come to the dentist because they understand what will happen if they don't come. And that's the important message that we have to get through the whole practice, is that give our patients clarity so that they come back for what they need to have done. And so Jayne's job is to make sure that people don't ring up confused saying, I haven't got an appointment to have my crown put in. I haven't got an appointment for my aligners. These are things that we hear, or Jayne hears. So we at the present moment, our business is a combination of the both of us, where Jayne specifically trains front office teams individually, and I train, and Jayne also helps out with group coaching, much like your club, because it's a leverage model for time. And then we have a little bit of private consulting as well on top of that. So it's a 3-part process that a lot of our clients have, all 3 parts. And they all need all 3 parts. As much as we've tried to say, you only need 1 or 2, they really do need, a little bit of individual, a little bit of group, and a lot of front office as well.
Absolutely. It's that whole thing that, to be able to function as a human being, you need to have both working arms, both working legs, a functional brain, and all the rest of it. But a business is quite similar to that as well. So, Jayne, just to bring us up to speed with yourself, what's been your history?
And it's interesting just thinking about what David just said about how we started working together, and now all of a sudden, we separated and started doing different facets, like, following our genius. The things that we were really good at in our business was what we decided that we would share with other dentists. But more and more we're coming together again, because we're seeing that there's that whole picture, that whole entity of the communication in the practice, which really is all about that customer experience. And it's on the phone, it's off the phone, it's that how we communicate with our patients, with our team members, with our dentists every single day. So, my background was, and David already mentioned that I was a school teacher. So I've done that full circle. I'm sort of back to teaching again, except my students are a bit longer. They're adults now. I love it. So not children. But really, it's more than that. I see myself more now as a mentor and a coach. I thought I was a teacher and a trainer, but now I'm realising there's so much involved in working together and making sure we get the team working as a unit and being able to bring everyone together. And it's not just going in and teaching skills and that's the end of it. It's about how do we get them to actually use them? How do we get them to see that this is actually going to make their life easier as a team as well in the practice? So it's funny how things morph and change, and I think that happens in their practice as well. They start to realise what they do actually need. But David and I have worked this out now that we need to come together more and work together so that, we're not just focusing on one thing and then other things are falling apart and then it affects what we're trying to do.
Yeah, because it's more than just introducing a system or a script. This is what we say here, or this is what we do here now. It's more also what comes as part of that in order for it to be successful over the long term in a dental practice is how do we motivate the people who are doing it so they're doing it consistently all the time and always improving in that space as well, rather than just doing it when the owner is listening around the corner.
And I think, with what we do, I think we've discovered that there are different types of people working out there in dental practices, and we see the people that are willing to go above and beyond and do what they need to do and really enjoy it. You can see it, you can hear it on the phone. And David mentioned before about working with teams, helping them with their phone skills, but that was the missing link for me. Was I really didn't know what they were saying on the phone. They were telling me what they were saying on the phone. I was delivering a lot of great content and helping them upskill them, but really not pinpointing where their true weaknesses were. So obviously, a lot of people know that I track calls coming into practices now. So I actually listen to those phone calls. But the powerful part for me has been I listen to the team member, but I'm listening to your patients as well. So I am actually, I really am the fly on the wall. I'm actually quite, I'm able to see what a lot of dentists would never know or see with the people that are ringing their practices. And it's quite revealing. It's real learning.
I want to touch on that point because I want to ask about what the experience is like working with you both. Like, what can practices expect when working with you guys? And one of those areas is the dental phone excellence side, which is the phone tracking side. And if I was feeling very confident in my space receptionist, I'd say, yeah, jump on board, listen to me, I'm awesome. And I'm always out there to improve. So I'm feeling pretty happy about that. But we're not all like that. We approach it as I've got lots to learn. I'm not totally competent. I really want to make sure that I'm feeling happy and confident every day. And that means just doing the same old. And I listened not to many, maybe 5 phone calls from one particular practice that were already doing this. And one of the things that was highlighted to me is that the way the phones were being managed, there wasn't anything wrong with it. It was perfectly acceptable, perfectly normal, professional, polite. But I think what you encourage people to do is step outside your comfort zone that little bit, and how can we make it actually extraordinary? Bells and whistles put on top of that telephone experience. So what can a team member, to help allay any of fears they may have, what can a team member expect in terms of personal growth with the tracking of their phone calls?
Well, I think it's building on where they're at right now. You're absolutely right. A lot of team members are doing really fabulous things. But I think what often happens is they're not result driven. They don't realise that when they pick that phone up, there needs to be a result. And being professional and being polite and having a level of confidence on the phone, they're all great things that we need. But if we're not getting a result at the end of the phone call, when we're not helping that person and giving them the next step and making an appointment for them, the phone call is really like a missed opportunity. So with those team members, I suppose, that are lacking that confidence, I always bring them back to my own personal experience. And I think that's been the point of difference for me, is that not only do I come in and work with these team members to help build up their confidence, that they understand that I was them once upon a time. I was that person that didn't have that confidence. I always say to them, look, if you think you're struggling on the phones, you should have heard me way back in the day when I first started answering phones in my husband's dental practice and failing, miserably at a lot of the calls. But over time, you will be able to pick up these skills. You will be able to regain that confidence. And that's, I work really hard on that. And it's about me having a relationship too with the people I work with. There's a level of friendship as well as a level of leadership, and being able to really help and guide them. So they have that respect that I get where they're at, that I can really help them. And
gosh, that building up of the confidence is just so crucial, and that should be an enticing factor for anybody. You know, as we get on a path of progress, on a path of getting better and better, we do develop such a self-confidence within ourselves that we're approaching our job and the tasks within it, including answering the phone, in a more powerful way all the time. And that feels like we're getting better as a human being within what we do, which is, of course, one of our major drivers as individuals in that Daniel Pink book, Drive, that mastery is one of the core things that drive us as individuals. And so this is a pathway towards that. And David, talk to us a bit more about how working from your side of it comes into play within the practice and how that rolls out.
Well, I think, Julie, a lot of dentists are very C-type characters in the DISC profile. You know, they're very engineer. It's how do things work? How do I put things together without looking at the relationships that happen? You know, people go to the dentist because, you know, it's a grudge buy, but everybody, no matter how big or strong they look, has an inherent fear of what's going to happen. It's something that they can't see to start off with. It's something that they can't see going on, and it's something they often don't see the end result of. And there is an apprehension, no matter how big they are. But I think dentists and dental employees also just get used to looking at it from their side. You know, come on, you know, I've got to give you a needle, bang, off we go. But we forget that there is this nurturing that needs to happen, no matter who the patient is. And developing that system of customer relation within the practice is really important. You know, there are certain types who turn up for your first appointment of the day and your first appointment after lunch because they don't want to be waiting around and they just want to get in and get their work done and get out. But there are others who may be pacing the floor outside or, you know, the street outside before they're finally coming in. You know, and we've got to build on those parts of and the importance of those parts of the practice, because traditionally dentistry is sold to dentists as being marketing, which is right up one end before the person even contacts the practice, and case acceptance. If you got marketing right and you've got case acceptance right, you'll be a successful dentist. But I think the computerization of dental practices has actually destroyed some of the human relationship. You know, I was in a practice a long time ago now, 6 or 7 years ago, a specialist dental practice, and I just watched at his reception as patient after patient came out, and the receptionist said, "I'll just wait to see what the dentist has done when the computer will tell me." And nearly every patient left without an appointment because there was no invested handover of a verbal handover. And you know, our dental patients are just like small children. Sometimes they've got to be told something many times for it to sink in.
It's like a story, isn't it?
Yeah.
The story of what happened in the treatment room.
Yeah, this is what happened in the treatment room. This is why you're coming back. This is what will happen if you don't come back. And this is why we need to do it in this time frame and not any later. And having that said to them 3 or 4 times, by the time they get out there, well, I better make that appointment, as opposed to don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I have to wait for my roster.
And certainly, Jayne, you'll know this. I knew this from years and years on the reception desk. The number of patients that would come out, and I'd say to them, "What do you need any further appointment time?" No. Or the dentist has told me you need to come back for an hour. Do you know what that was for? No. And you go back and tell the dentist, and they're absolutely shocked. But I explained it to them so clearly; they said they understood.
Yeah. It's not empowering the team members either, because there's that opportunity to really get these team members to step up into these roles of being really, you know, effective communicators, and it postures them as well. And then they start feeling good about what they do because they're feeling like they have a level of posture with the patients. They're not just the young girl that sits behind the desk answering phones. I think those days have to go. We can't keep, the expectation is we want more than that, but yet the biggest problem is we're not willing to invest time, energy and money into these team members who are really, I don't like to use this phrase very often, but the money-making people of the practice. They're the people driving the ship. They're the pilots, aren't they? You know, the dentist loves to think that they're the pilot and they're up the front of the aeroplane and it's all happening there, but they're not. It's the young women a lot of the time who are answering phones in their dental practice that they've, you know, when you think of all the other businesses out there and in the world and what you know, attention they pay to the people who are in those roles, yet dental are behind the times when it comes to that. With that,
yeah, we are a little bit behind the times, and when, you know, the whole of Australia, it seems like the same is happening in England and the US as well, that we are getting a smaller and smaller pool of people to choose from when hiring dental assistants and receptionists. There seems to be such a demand out there, and the pool is very small. And so, if we are wanting to really build a team of thinking, invested people, we're talking about providing them with an opportunity of doing more than just mindlessly moving throughout a series of tasks in a day, that they're thinking about every patient, they're mindful with every charting so they know what to explain to the patient afterwards, and that they are putting that circle of communication in place because they understand where the breaks happen for the patient, where they become disengaged. And so all of a sudden the dentist, the assistant and the receptionist are working together as a team for this patient.
And I think, like, I'm working with a few teams at the moment, and there's a few standout teams, and they've had the longevity of their team members at the practice, and they're vested. They really, you know, sometimes I think, I forget you're not the business owners because you're talking like you have owner eyes. You're really wanting everything to work really well and help the person that's employed you, your boss, your dentist. I really feel that from them. And that's developed over time. You know, they start because they're being given the empowerment. They're given that ability to be thinkers, to actually move on from just, as you said, it seems like mindless tasks, doesn't it? One thing after another, and they're not understanding the why of what they're doing, and the results that they're getting, and celebrating those results. Because once they really know their numbers and what's happening in the practice and how they have that direct influence on it, the right people step up to those roles, and it's great to see. I love it. I really enjoy working with those teams, but I see the potential in the teams that aren't quite there yet, and that it's it can take time, and gradually they get there, and that's the thing. It's not a quick fix. I know a lot of times in marketing we always talk about we can do this quickly and easily, and we can over time. Over time, but it, you know, you have to really keep going with it, and you know, helping your team, and it can't just be one-offs and then we wonder why they're not putting it into action and it's not working. You see the difference between the teams that have that level of continuity of either team training or coaching. And that's where the gold is. That's when you really are going to get those results consistently for a long time. But
I was going to talk about that. What does a dental practice, if they said, okay, we're going to bring David and Jayne on, we're going to improve the team. Number one question is, what can they say to their team to help prepare them? But also, what environment do they need to really create for their team, for you guys to be able to be as successful and help them achieve their level of success that they've employed you to do?
Well, I think the first thing, Julie, is that they've got to be willing to understand that they need to improve, that the practice does have a need to improve, and that's why we've been hired. There is a point that, it's almost like the perfect round of golf. It's impossible to ever achieve. And so, you can improve from A to B, but you can't actually get to, what is it? What's the top score in bowling? 300? It's very hard to achieve a 300 in bowling. Well, there is no 300 in dental practice ownership, because there's always little bits. The perfect golf round is where you don't have to pull out your putter because you hole every shot from the fairway. And so therefore you've gone round in 18 and 22 under par. Well, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen at all. So they have to understand that no matter how good they are, there is room for some improvement, and that improvement will see an improvement in their work environment. The ultimate end result is that the practice becomes more successful, employs more people, so there's more camaraderie, and there's also more job security in working in a successful practice. And so the opposite is also true, that if the practice doesn't progress, it's actually retreating back to being closer to being a non-viable entity, and I would much rather work in a practice that is growing and being successful rather than one that is struggling to maintain its patients. But getting back to the processes, you and I both know, Julie, that we've seen patients come into a practice all excited and go and see the dentist for the first time, and they never rebook. And it may not even be anything that the dentist has said. They may have made that decision that they're not coming back before they've even met the dentist, because they've sat in a seat and looked around and seen some dust or cobwebs, or heard something on the phone, heard two people in the office talking about another patient or talking about another team member derogatory, heard a bad phone call, all these sorts of things. And we wonder, we say, they were a shopper. We call them a shopper. Oh, they were a shopper. We make an excuse for something, but there is always a reason. The fact that they'd actually even turned up meant that they were there because they wanted to get some dentistry done. And if we don't successfully complete that transaction in terms of becoming their dentist, and finishing any treatment that they need, then we've let them down, because they've already made that decision. They made that decision before they pick up the phone, and they made that decision when they enter our front door, and everything is downhill from there. So that was why I hired Jayne straight away to just come and be my concierge.
No, you hired me. You wanted me to be your official schmoozer.
Yeah, I said, just come and schmooze with my patients out the front.
I said, is that, what's that? And you said, it's just come in and chat to the patients. I went, let me think. Yep, okay.
I can do that.
But then he didn't tell me about that. My backstory is the story when two of the team members, and one of them I'm about to see tomorrow because she's an amazing woman, but they were off sick. And so all of a sudden it was like, Jayne, I need you to answer the phones. I go, oh, my gosh, what do I say? All the things that sometimes team members say to me, I just want to know what to say. How do I say that? What would I say? How do I answer it? And so I had a few things written down, a greeting, and that was it. And I did really well on the first day. I remember I didn't make many appointments. Cancellations, not a problem. Okay, no worries. That was me. All the things that But it's interesting what Julie said about how team members, that learning style. I worked out a long time ago, outside of teaching actually, that team members especially learn different ways. They have their own style of learning, and it's about finding that learning style and really matching when you're coaching, when you're teaching, because coaching's not, we talk about coaching, but you're teaching, you're mentoring, you're inspiring, you're listening, you're showing empathy, and you're a therapist, all those things, So, pinpointing how they actually learn has been really important for me, because that's when I know I can start to get through to them and they start to really take it on and get it. If they don't get it, they're not going to do it.
And I think we're complex human beings, aren't we? I mean, Charles talks about this in his presentations. We're all weirdos, None of us have had identical scenarios or beliefs or values or anything. And we all have these wildly different behaviours and responses to the situations around us. And I think that is one of the barriers for dental practice owners. I'm busy seeing patients all day. Then I'm running the business side of things, catering for people's holidays and long service leave and everything. And now I have to become a psychologist as well to try to figure out the best environment to create for these people.
Yeah, I know.
So as you would know, Julie, that's one of the big selling points for having a coach or having a consultant in your practice, is that it allows the dentist to go back to just being the technician or the mechanic, and help in running the practice comes from an outside influence, which is sometimes more authoritative than the dentist trying to do it themselves. And I hear dentists say, "Oh, I'll teach my staff how to answer the phone." They're not listening to the phones. They don't do it for a living. They've never learned how to teach it, and they're trying to teach it. And the staff's really saying in the back of their head, all those things. You've never done this. You just want us to make you more money. And why should we listen to you? So when they hire us or they hire Jayne for the phones, all of a sudden the staff lift to fix that issue. But the other thing that dentists don't do really well is that they don't learn how to manage people as well. So again, having a third-party intermediary gives our clients, or we find our clients, there's some authority given to us by the dentist, and the team then take that authority willingly, as opposed to, "Oh, we've heard this all before from," and the dentist will say to us afterwards, they say, "I've said that to them before. But hearing it from us makes it different."
I recently spoke to a dentist who she said to me, "Oh, look, I've tried to do the training, they just don't listen to me. And by the way, I just thought I'd let you know that one of these particular people on the team that you'll be working with, she's not very open. She doesn't really open up. It might be hard to." So, she framed it up for me. And so I was anticipating that there was going to be this particular team member that wasn't open to what was, and she was a bit quiet at first. And then all of a sudden the gate opened. And she just said everything she needed to say. She enjoyed that sort of, arena of learning that it enabled her to be able. And so when I gave a bit of feedback to the dentist, it was like, "Oh, great. We found the place where she can learn and she can open up and be, more of herself."
Because people who are not struggling with self-confidence but possibly feeling like a little bit incompetent in their space, you've got to create quite a safe environment for them to even be open to hearing of a different way of doing things, let alone practicing it out.
Yeah, and moving from the uncomfortable to the comfortable, because that's the only way we get comfortable. We're usually uncomfortable first before I liken it to sitting in a lounge for the first time and you think, I can't quite get comfortable, and I'll put a cushion here and now I'm comfortable. But we move from the uncomfortable to the comfortable. So I said to them, that's okay. I want that to happen for you. And it's not until, they have that realization that this is actually what's happened, and they think of all those times in their life when they felt uncomfortable. And sometimes that drives us to want to move to the comfortable too, doesn't it? That we do the learning. But, back to team members when they're learning, that self-realization. I always love it when I'm coaching a team and all of a sudden they start telling me what their problems are. They start telling me what some of the solutions are. All of a sudden I go, this is brilliant. They're accepting what we might see as their weaknesses, their inadequacies, when in actual fact that self-realization is their strength. And that's what's allowing them to move on. They've got to say it. There's no point in me saying.
And notice that once they're in that space of, yes, I want to improve, the improvement's real quick.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time to resist change and a new way of doing things, doesn't it? But when you embrace it, and as you were talking around the learning styles and how people process through that space, I was just picturing in my brain a football team and a new young footballer coming onto that team, seeing all the tremendous performers. Imagine if that footballer said, well, it's too uncomfortable to get to that wonderful, glorious space of being a tremendous superstar. So I'm just going to sit right here and just hope I get to keep my position on the team. That's not the way the life works. But it's not where we get true enjoyment from life either. We get enjoyment from life from being able to progressively get to the person that we dream ourselves, know our potential can be one day. That sense of progress. I know Tony Robbins says progress equals happiness for us.
And I think that expectation is interesting. Like, as leaders, the dentist, the owner, the business owner, are they setting those expectations, or do they fear setting expectations too high or pushing their team member to be able to reach the expectations that are needed for the practice out of fear they might leave, out of fear that they might not like them? I find this a lot with female leaders, have struggled with that a lot. They may not like me. They might not see me as their friend. So there's lots of things happening there. And that's why David, when he's working with the dentist, these are things that you can help the dentist overcome so that they can work in better unison with their team as well. Because we find that a lot when I'm working with teams. These are some of the things that raise their ugly heads, you know, that David can then address and work with the leaders, the dentists.
Because David, the dentist has to be in that learning space as well, that they need to have that desire to identify areas for possible improvement.
You're absolutely right, Julie, because, you know, for the practice to improve, they've got to have an idea of what they want that improvement to be. You know, we've got to know that, just like our holiday, we've got to know where we're going, and then we've got to know how we're going to get there and what we need to do to get there, and then what we're going to do when we get there as well. And so wishing for things without actually having a plan is really just a dream. And it's not even a dream, it's just a wish. It's just a hope. And so helping the dentist to break it down into what they need to do, you know, they need to do huddles. They need to have productive meetings. They need to give feedback to their team members on regular basis so that the team grows. You know, it's no point just having grand plans but not feeding the team or feeding them crumbs. You've got to enrich the team. And that's what we see with our successful clients, is that, you know, they're out and about. They're, you know, one of our clients in America has just taken her staff for a holiday to Cancun from New Orleans. You know, photos on the plane, and it's an all-girl practice. You know, everybody who works, a female owner.
So there was no resistance to going on that holiday.
Yeah. but even here in Sydney, you know, Kate and I went to the football up at Penrith, and Jane's client sent me a message, and he goes, "I see you," and he's taken a photo from the other side of the ground, and he's blown it up. He's blown it up further than I could blow my phone up to picture me with my hat and Kate, and because he's come to those seats. But what the backstory to that was that on his Facebook page, he had his whole team there, and so they were all at the footy together, just, you know, cheering on the local team. So that was great. You know, that's the kind of thing. That's the kind of camaraderie that builds a successful business within the business, but it also generates, you know, patients want to become a part of that success as well. You know, they feel the energy, they feel the love, and they want to be a part of that love.
And we know, because that's how we ran our practice. And we knew it when we were in the practice, working in the business with our patients, in those sorts of relationships with them and our team. But we really understood it the next day after we actually finished at the practice, when we actually had left and we've moved on to something new. We really missed it. We it's like we got it, but we got it more afterwards, didn't we? It was something that
once it was taken away from you again, you realise that there was the substantial space that it held for you.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at when you've gone into practices, their kind of before picture, if you like, going with, you know, dental analogies, before and after pictures for cosmetics, and then once you've moved a practice through the process, what does that team end up looking like after the fact? Explain some of the changes that you've seen in some of your clients, if you can.
Well, I think that the team becomes more unified right from the start, Julie. You know, the end result of what they look like at the end and what they look like at the start is that anybody who was a resistant employee to change has either got to change their attitude, which is great, because it doesn't mean they need to be retrained. We just have to, you know, flick that switch in their mind. But if we can't flick that switch, then they have to be replaced. But, you know, even in our practice, I don't think, you know, everybody who replaced anybody, even the good staff that moved on, you know, to have babies or relocate interstate, they were still replaced by somebody who grew into the position. The position grew with that staff member, but then the position grew with the next staff member as well. And so what you find is this like I said before, you end up with this practice with a sense of community amongst its team members. They're in it, that they really are in it for each other. They're there for each other. There's a unity. They're not individuals working on a project. They're a team working on a project. That's I think the best result for the practice is that they find out who the passengers have been in their practice, and they either get them working or they get them working somewhere else.
But I think that mindset too, the team members move from not being people who are involved in working on the business, only in the business. So they continue that mindset. And I think what happens then, it's like becomes part of their culture, that the expectation then is that new people coming in, this is because that's a really big downfall in a lot of practices, how they onboard new team members. Because once they start getting into the wrong pattern or not following the system properly, or there is no system for them to follow, then that can be, very dangerous and detrimental to the business and to other team members. So, you join, as you said, the football team. This is how the football team plays. This is how the coach guides them. And it's about new people coming in. No one comes in and just starts making up their own stuff. That's not how to run a successful business. There has to be systems, effective systems that work, that are good for the business and good for the team members too.
Because you guys would have heard this as well of, I'm ready to go ahead with a program once I've got the right team members in place.
Yeah, so what that message says is, so you're going to interview someone, you're going to say, I think you're going to be good for the job, but as soon as you start, we're going to bring in a new system.
We don't know what we're doing.
As opposed to, let's just get the system in and then we'll fit people into the system, which is
because that's what proper training is. It's about it being systematized so that it stays there, because you know that old adage, what we train people and they might leave, but the worst scenario is that we don't train them and they stay.
Yeah, I love that line. It's such a powerful line. And the other quote that I use all the time is a quote by Archilochus, that we don't rise to the level of our dreams, we fall to the level of our training. And I think if business owners, dental practice owners, really brought that into their soul, they would see then if they want to increase the success of their dental practice, then that means increasing the success of every individual within that practice.
Yeah, absolutely. A friend of mine who's a sales trainer says that most sporting teams are run better than businesses. And the reason is that sporting teams have the 3 Ps. They have a professional coach, they practice, and they have a playbook. And most dental practices, they don't have a coach. They practice only on live patients, on live phone calls, and they have no scripts or playbook about how they do things at all, except set up trays. They all know how to set up trays. But I've never had a patient walk in and go, that is the best tray setup I've ever seen. I've been going to the dentist for 50 years and that is the best tray setup I have ever seen.
What they do say is they say, she was really nice.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. It's the human interaction. That's what patients return for, is the human interaction.
It's interesting with coaches. We were just talking about that. I was listening to it. There's a few things out there at the moment with interviews from coaches from the past. And some of those interviews, I started listening to a few thinking, why do I need to listen to a basketball coach? Like, I don't know how this would help me in my business, coaching teams, but I'll listen anyway.
Was that John Wooden? No?
I should remember his name straight away and I can definitely look it up. But it was, there were a few of them and it was fascinating because I thought this is exactly what we should be doing in our businesses and how we should structure things. And learning this from sporting coaches was quite fascinated me.
Just recently within the Richmond Football Club, what's his name, the coach of the Richmond Football Club? Damien Hardwick, talking about the level of care that each of those players have for each other. And that is what's really has sparked their success over the last few years, is that they truly care for each other.
Yeah, we're seeing that in
our football
rugby
team.
league at Penrith now. They haven't lost they've lost one game, last year's grand final, in more than a year. They've won every game but one. And you can see that these guys have grown up playing rugby league together, and now they're in first grade together, and they really do care. Some of the back photos that you see of them congratulating each other,
they respect each
other.
Yeah,
they're in it for each other.
Yeah.
And that's what we try and get with our staff. If they can be in it with each other for the end result.
And sometimes, that we do come into, coaching teams where there isn't quite that respect for each other. And sometimes, we have to work on getting that happening, because otherwise, for them to learn and for them to grow is going to be hard, because there's lots of obstacles in their way, each other. So it's about bringing them together somehow. And we're all very different, and it can be quite complicated, but doable. It just can take a bit of extra time to make that happen, because individually each of them are good contributors to the business, but when they work together, which is what they have to do and communicate, that all falls apart, and that's affecting the business. So yeah, it's good when we can overcome that and work with the team on that. Again, therapy, that sometimes comes into play as a coach or a therapist as well, that you have to listen and understand. And the trainer in me sometimes gets a little frustrated, because I go, I just want to teach them all this stuff. And we can't quite get moving with that until we iron out and work out this. And it's sort of like coming back to patients can be like that. As dentists, you see and hear dentists wanting to get stuck out. I just want to do the treatment planning. I don't want to have to, do all this stuff, but you have to, because they're people with teeth, not just teeth.
Yeah, depending on the team, I found that as well. There needs to be some foundational work happening. Otherwise, you're just throwing information at people who will do it just because they've been told to do it, but it won't be a long-lasting shift and change. And it won't be a shift and change where then further improvement is made, because the person cares and is invested and thinks, how can I make this even better and better over time?
Yeah. And the other thing that I learned very early on, I suppose as a mother and as a teacher, that a little bit of praise, a little bit of let's lift them up, even when it's something small that we notice, and do it daily. And that's a really important thing. It sounds like, it's so overlooked. I think what happens, something weird happens when we go from being a child to an adult. It's like someone decided that we don't need that anymore.
Yeah.
We don't need anyone acknowledging us and recognising what we do, as small as it may be. But yet when we're young children, we get so much of that. And I feel that that's an important part of getting that team to gel and work together as well.
I wholeheartedly agree. It's not just about identifying with a person, this is where you're falling down. This is where you're falling up. This is where you're magnificent. This is where I want other people to look at you and learn from you, and to reward the behaviour that you want repeated.
Yeah, because there's always something good in every single person, no matter how much improvement they need. There's always something there that you can commend them on, that you can lift them up, and then we work from there, not feeling and not overlooking. A lot of team members I work with, I've got people who've just arrived, no dental experience, and then I've got women that have been doing this for 35 to 40 years. And all of a sudden I arrive and it's like, I've come in to tell them all these new things that they tell me they already know.
That's right. That's a tricky space, and you both would have come across this, those team members that have been around for a couple of decades and don't tell me what to do. I'm doing just fine. Thanks very much. What's your thoughts around that?
Well, I suppose my advantage is that I've been around for a long time as well, and I don't know everything. But yeah, I think it's framing it up. It's like we really need to look at the people we're working with, learn as much as we can, find out what makes them tick, frame it up really well so that then they go into this in a positive way. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that is one of the problems, Julie, isn't it? I've been doing this all my life and I know better than you, but it's also one of the things that dentists hire. They hire somebody else who's had a lot of experience, but they have no idea what the training was for that person. It might be they may never have been trained. They just have a lot of experience at winging it in other practices.
Years of experience. Maybe their experience is just the years,
yes,
and not really, or not the right experience that matches your practice. There can be a mismatch there, even with someone. Sometimes there's more of a match with someone coming in fresh with new eyes and a great attitude. So
I had someone once come to me, highly recommended by a friend of mine, and she said to me, one of the other practices I used to work at, my boss said it was okay for me to read magazines if there was nothing to do.
Wow. At least we're up to date with what's happening with Meghan Markle.
really?
Oh, that's shocking. I'd love to get you guys back on. I know that we're cutting it fine on the timeline to talk about how to recruit for a great team moving forward. So I'd love to get you back on at some point in the future. But I want to thank you both so much for being my very first guests on the Julie Parker Practice Success podcast. And your contributions to the industry have just been so enormous. And I encourage dental practices out there, if you want to achieve a greater level of success, people come to you because you're an expert with fillings and crowns and dentistry, and you keep doing all your further study in that. Well, Jayne and David do all of their further study in how to help your practice be more successful, and the members within it to embrace that success moving forward and do what's necessary to all achieve great things together. Thank you so very much.
Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks very much for having us.
Really
I'm
enjoyed
going to
it.
put all your contact details and everything, of course, in the show notes, but have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you so much, Jayne and David. You are both such a wealth of experience and knowledge and wisdom when it comes to helping practices get better and better at what they do. I encourage all of our listeners to go to the show notes, click on the links included, and investigate what Jayne and David could do for your dental practice moving forward into the future. Otherwise, thank you so much for your attention. A little reminder, if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. Let me know personally. My email is in the show notes, whether there are any guests or topics you would like covered moving forward. Have a fantastic week, and I'll speak to you next time. Hey, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, you should join the club. The club members receive an online lunch and learn every week where I share insights, systems and strategies to improve the success of your practice. These lunch and learns could not be easier. They are recordings so you can watch them at a time that suits you. Members also have full access to the library of all of our past topics. The price is just $199 per month, and it is a powerful and effective way to upskill your team. I hope to see you there.